Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the April edition of the Victor Central School District Town Hall. My name is Tim Terranova, and I'm the proud superintendent of the Victor Central School District. This particular town hall isn't as exciting typically as most of the others because we don't have kids on with us tonight. Actually, I'm riding solo, and I would like to talk to you for those of you that are watching live, and certainly those that watch it later on after it's taped. Want to share with you the 26-27 budget presentation that the Board of Education approved last Thursday as part of the 26-27 budget process. So tonight I'm going to go over some of the information from the budget. We also have access to questions. So if you have a question and you're watching live, you can put the question right in the part of Facebook there where you can share comments. If for some reason you watch this later on the next few days and you have a question, just post it on there because it's on our Facebook page and then we'll try to answer it as soon as we can. But if you're watching live, you can always post a question and I'll try to check periodically. So in terms of tonight's presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about our goals of a budget, as well as some of our successes that we've had in this district. Then I'm going to update you on enrollment and staffing, the overall expenditures, overall revenue, and then the budget comparison to previous years. Also, I want to share a tax rate history comparison with everyone tonight. And then at the end of the presentation, talk quickly about the bus proposition that's also on the ballot, Board of Ed candidates, and our calendar of future presentations. So many of you have seen these goals before. They really haven't changed significantly in the last few years. We want to maintain a comprehensive education that the district community expects in Victor. And we do that by aligning our resources towards our district strategic plan. We're moving into next year, the fifth year of our 5-year strategic plan. So we're going to be developing the next 5-year plan, 3 to 5 year plan next year. But we are moving into our last year of our strategic plan. That really does guide us in our work towards a comprehensive education. Then financially, we want to maximize every dollar spent. We want to do that by maximizing our ability to generate aid for the following year. That's usually typically state aid through, sometimes we do that through BOCES as well as other means. And we want to make sure when we maximize the use of every dollar and try to generate aid, that we are stabilizing our reserves. We don't want to be using our reserves as revenue for future years. We want to make sure they're stable and available for emergencies. And as always, we want to be transparent in terms of our communication and the community's understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it in terms of our budget. Just a few quick examples of successes. In the past few years, our special education excellence is well known. Our graduation rate for students with disabilities has increased from 58% in 2020 to 89% in 2025. That's a significant growth in graduation rate. That means our kids are being more and more successful, those that have IEPs. We are also expanding opportunities for all kids as we've seen a significant rise in students, including those who are economically disadvantaged, enrolling in dual enrollment college courses, as well as our work study and internship program. As you know, we started a work-based learning program about 3 years ago, and that has had huge success as we generate opportunities for kids as they move through high school. In addition to that level of success, we're also having incredible success with kids participating in the advanced placement process. Uh, we actually reached our highest participation rate ever for advanced placement courses in 2025 with a record-breaking percentage of students earning a 3 or higher. The APs are scored 1 through 5, with 3 being successful, and our percentage of kids achieving a 3 or higher was amazing, and the percentage of kids participating and attempting and challenging an AP was the greatest rate ever, which is a great combination with the fact that I just shared around dual enrollment college courses and work-based learning. And certainly our foundational growth that really drives everything, especially reading, writing, literacy, problem-solving numeracy. Those performances have continued to show substantial upward trends in grades 3 through 8. And we look forward to continuing that progress, and then those kids getting into the secondary level and having even more success as they get into those grade levels. So that's really, if I go back to our goals, maintain a comprehensive education that VCS district community expects. These are just some examples of how we are doing that and how we are really trying to improve every day. A little bit on enrollment and staffing. This is an interesting slide. We showed this last year, but we also added the 25-26 school year to this. The yellow line is our enrollment growth and or stability since 2007. And then the bar graph is the state aid increases we've gotten each year. And a couple things about this slide. If you started before 2007 and saw our enrollment, it would be much farther down, closer to between 2,000 and 3,000 students. So we saw a significant increase in enrollment in our district in the late 90s and through really 2012, 2013. Because of that, there was no way the state aid was able to catch up to that. So the district was in serious revenue issue, had serious revenue issues, and you can tell by the gap between the blue bar graph and the yellow line graph. That space in between is the gap between our needed revenue and actual revenue based upon our enrollment. Now, the good news is, as you can see, between really 2021 and 2024, our state aid was finally rectified and our foundation was utilized at 100%. Our foundation formula, I need to say, we were not getting anywhere near what we were supposed to be getting in years before. We finally got what we were supposed to get in the years between 2021 and 2024. And now you'll see gradual increases in aid between 2024 and 2026. And next year, the projection is somewhere between 1% and 2% increase in foundation aid. So the challenge right now is our increases in aid, which is a big portion of our revenue next to taxes, is not increasing at the level of our expenses. And I will talk about that in a couple of minutes. But this big gap between the yellow line and the blue bar graph really shows how the district lost over $100 million during that time when we should have been receiving the aid that we needed based upon our enrollment. So as you saw from the yellow line, our enrollment is really stabilized. It's slightly decreasing actually the last couple of years. So because of that, we've been able to realign our staffing levels while preserving the integrity of our class size parameters and all existing programs. We're not reducing programs. We're not cutting people in terms of staff members, and we're staying within our class size parameters next year. We are finding efficiencies. So we have a bubble of a larger enrollment that is moving into the junior high next year, and that's coming from the elementary level. So we're having some reduction in enrollment at the elementary level, an increase in enrollment at the junior high secondary level. But because of some strategic staffing, we're able to reduce some positions at the elementary level because of attrition, either retirements or resignation, and not have to increase the same amount of staffing at the secondary level, even though we have a bubble of kids moving through the junior high. And we're not changing class size parameters to do that. So it's really some strategic staffing where we're able to reduce 8 positions in terms of elementary teaching positions, also 1 secondary science teaching position, and we're consistently looking at other areas to be efficient with, again, to look at every time a teacher retires or resigns, or any staff member retires or resigns, do we need that position? And if we do, then obviously we fill it. We're also reinvesting in some high impact areas like technology and world languages. And we're keeping 3 bubble positions in our budget. What that means is we're holding the salaries for 1 kindergarten position and 2 special ed positions. If we don't need to fill those positions, then that money will be utilized as fund balance, which will support hopefully our reserves, which we need to strengthen. So overall expenditures, you'll see the big chart here. We are looking at a increase in our budget from 109,771,405 to 116,316,911. That's a 5.96% increase in budget to budget, which is less of an increase than last year to this year, but it's still an increase, even though we're slightly reducing staffing. And why is that? Well, we've got some areas that our expenses are growing much faster than our revenue. The first is salary. Actually, salaries. If you look at the instructional and the non-instructional, and you put them together, they're increasing around 4%. We do have a bump in non-instructional salaries, and that's really because we've tried to incentivize our bus drivers and our transportation department, as well as some of our other CSEA groups, by adding some raises to their contract as well as some incentives to their contract. So that's why you'll see a bump in salaries in non-instructional versus instructional. Fringe benefits are going up 8.8%. And actually, that's a combination of different things. But the one specific area in fringe benefits, which is health insurance, is increasing over 15%. That's something that is very difficult to keep up with. All districts and actually all businesses and people are dealing with health insurance cost increases across the country. That increase is something that we have to deal with over the next couple of years because it's very difficult to keep up with in terms of an 8.8% increase. We're projecting a $2.7 million increase just in fringe benefits. Another area is called contractual. You'll see that going up 8.68%. And most of that increase is due to utility costs. In fact, our utility costs are going up $184,000 next school year. So again, that's a big chunk of what is called contractual, and that's another area that has some exploding expenses. Tuition is going up significantly from 1.186 million to 1.671 million. And that's mainly due to some students who have complex need that require educational and related services outside the district. So those are kids that have high needs that we're servicing, and that's why that increase went up the way it did. BOCES continues to go up. We're projecting a 9.22% increase in BOCES costs. Part of that is because we're shifting more and more technology and instructional services costs through BOCES. And that's actually a good thing. If we're going to have to pay that kind of money, we want to do that through BOCES because we get aid back the following year. So it's important to flow those types of expenses through BOCES. Another increase is an interfund transfer of 50%. That we're talking a $200,000 increase to a $300,000 increase. It's actually not an increase. It's actually a push because we're moving money that we had in BOCES and putting it into the interfund transfer for a capital outlay project. And our capital outlay project actually receives more state aid the following year than BOCES does. So that's a way where we're shifting money from one category to another to generate more aid. But at the end of the day, even though we're reducing slightly the number of staff in our district, our expenses are still going up 5.96% for the reasons I just discussed. Now, if you look at our per pupil expenditure comparison, which is the we get that by dividing the total budgeted operating expenses by our projected student enrollment next year, as well as this year, you will see we are still the lowest, we are still have a lower per pupil expenditure than the average in the average of the school districts in all three counties that are surround us. That'd be Monroe County, Ontario County, and Wayne County. And even though, because our budget to budget increase is 5.96%, our per pupil expenditure will go up to $27,954. That's still lower than the average for schools in Monroe, Ontario, and Wayne County, even before they have to project their increases in. So that's based upon this year's per pupil expenditure of school districts in those counties versus our projected per pupil expenditure next year. So we wanted to make sure we showed you that and that we're still trying to be economically as stable as possible, but also fair to the taxpayers with our per pupil expenditure. Let's talk about revenue now for a second. We have by law have to approve a school budget by the board meeting on April 16th, despite uncertain state aid numbers. The state's supposed to approve their budget by April 1st, but most of the time they don't, and this year they haven't as well. They have passed numerous budget extenders as of today's presentation, so we don't know the state aid that we're actually going to get, but we still have to legally adopt a budget. So that's tricky. If you look at this slide, which has a lot of numbers on it, I just want to talk about a few things. First of all, if you look at halfway down the chart, total state and federal sources, you'll see an increase of approximately 4.02% on the far right percent change. That's because we are estimating what would be a 2% increase in foundation aid, which leads to a 4.03% increase in total state aid. That estimated 2% is an estimate. We've been given a 1% increase by the governor, but based upon advocacy, we believe we're going to get 2%. So that's an estimate. If, however, the state aid is less than that, it does not affect our tax levy or the taxes you pay. The tax levy is still going to increase 4.29%. That's that top row. And that is within the tax cap. When you put the revenue up to this point, which really is taxes and aid, you'll see that it's going up, like I said, it's actually going up 3.92%. Now, the challenge is our expenses are going up 5.96%. So our revenue is 110,272,000, and our expenses are 116,316,000. That's a gap of $6,044,000 at $44,583. So what do? Well, what we're doing is we're going to appropriate what's called fund balance from this school year to pay for that gap. So for this year's budget, we appropriated $3,658,000 from last year's leftover contingency money or fund balance. Next year, we're going to need to appropriate at the most $6,044,000. The negative of that is it's almost double what we appropriated this year. So that's not a long-term feasible strategy. The good news is we build in contingency of somewhere between 4 and 5% each year in our budget. So this year we have contingency to cover the $6,044,000. And secondly, we expect that gap to decrease between now and the fall as we look at other efficiency opportunities and savings. Our goal is to get that gap closer to $4.5 to $4 million rather than $6 million. We would need to appropriate less money, which then means the contingency or fund balance at the end of this school year, a larger amount of that could go into our reserves rather than paying for next year's budget. So this is how we equal our expenses with our revenue by adding the $6,044,000 to our revenue, which ends up a 5.96% revenue, all sources. Again, hopefully, we believe based upon our work that we're doing, that gap will be less and we'll be able to support more of our reserves. So when you look at the overall budget to budget's a 5.96% increase. Levy to levy, that's the amount taxed for our school district, the total amount. That's a 4.29% increase in our tax levy, which is within the tax cap. We are not exceeding the tax cap next year. And then our rate, which is the rate of money, the true tax rate that individual people and businesses are taxed, is increasing at 0.78% from $12.83 to $12.93. That is an estimate, but typically it actually goes down once we finalize the rate in August. So one positive about Victor, because of its overall growth as a community and the businesses, it spreads out the tax levy a little bit more than many other districts, which helps keep the actual rate lower. In terms of value property, you see this chart, we always try to estimate your specific taxes that you would pay. Now, this is without any star exemptions or credits. And of course, final assessment rolls aren't finalized until June 30th, 2026, and the final tax rates aren't set till August. But this gives you a sense of the percent change of the true tax value, true tax rate for a 200,000, 300,000, 400 and thousand and a $500,000 excuse me, a house for next year. It's not specific to individual homes. This is based upon if every home was valued at its assessed at the true tax value of the house, the true assessed rate. Certainly, many homes are not assessed at their true tax rate because there hasn't been reassessments in Victor in certain areas of our community in a while. But certain areas have been assessed recently, so these values are really focused on the total package, the total cost of the true tax value. Just like we looked at per pupil expenditure, we wanted to look at tax rate comparison. Again, this is the estimated tax rate for after our vote. It's still significantly less than the school district, the average tax rate in school districts in Ontario, Wayne, and Monroe County. Even when you add the potential increase that we'll have next year versus this year's rates for the other districts in the other counties. This is, we showed this chart last year, and we added now through 2025. This is an example of the tax rate history between 2000 and 2025. You'll see really a common trend line of decreasing tax rates. Even though our budgets are increasing, our tax rates are decreasing because of the population, the growth, and the businesses within Victor Central School District. Just a side note on this, and it's a little bit tricky. This is different than the tax levy. The total tax levy doesn't change. The rates change. So if people move in or businesses move into our school community, we don't receive more money in taxes because of that. Our tax levy is set through this budget. What would happen is the tax impact on individual businesses and homeowners in the community the rate would decrease because it would be taken up by more businesses and more community members that are moving into this area. So that's a little bit of a difference between rate and levy. Also on the ballot is a bus fleet replacement concept where we are purchasing a 77 passenger diesel bus, actually 5 of them. We are purchasing 2 30-passenger diesel buses and 1 60-passenger diesel wheelchair bus. This is based upon a strategic plan to make sure the older buses are taken out of commission and our newer buses replace them. That's a revised price of $1,566,837. Again, this is separate from the budget vote. We would borrow or bond money towards this. And then there are 2 open seats on the Board of Education, and we have 3 individuals running. They are in the order that they appear on the ballot. Brian Adams, who's an incumbent, Christopher Parks, who is also an incumbent, and James Sawyers, who is running in addition to Christopher and Brian. So 3 individuals are running for 2 spots on the board. So this is the town hall that we're doing right now, April 21st. I also have a Rotary meeting tomorrow at noon where we'll present the budget. We have 2 presentations to our towns. One in Farmington on Tuesday, April 28th at 7 p.m. at the town board meeting, and one at the Victor Town Board meeting on Monday, May 11th at 7 p.m. We're also doing 2 Zoom presentations to our staff, May 4th and May 6th. And the big dates, Tuesday, May 5th at 7 p.m. in the Performing Arts Center. We have the budget hearing and meet the candidates night. Again, that's 7 p.m. on May 5th, Tuesday, in our auditorium or Performing Arts Center. Tuesday, May 12th, if you have not registered to vote, this is not for those who have already registered in previous years. New voters who have not registered, we have voter registration from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. in the district office on Tuesday, May 12th. So we encourage you to show up and register to vote if you haven't done so. And then our budget vote is Tuesday, May 19th from 6 a.m. all the way to 9 p.m. in the Early Childhood School Boardroom. And that's for the budget vote, bus proposition, and the Board of Ed election. We really encourage you to go to our website, www.victorschools.org, district budget, or contact myself at terranovat@victorschools.org. We will have a significant amount of information on this budget on our website. You can certainly contact me if you have any questions or comments about our budget. So that's the presentation. Sorry for the glitch in the middle. But we wanted to make sure we were as transparent as possible with you with what we're trying to do with our financial plan. Again, we thank the Board of Education for approving the budget on last Thursday, April 16th, and it will go to our voters on May 19th, Tuesday. I'll be back next month with some students, especially our seniors, recognizing some of our fantastic senior students as they really get to the end of their career here at Victor Central School District. Have a great night and take care.